So this time last year, I watched a documentary over on Netflix called The Tour de France Unchained. At the time, I had all clue about road cycling. I didn't understand any of it. In fact, I actually thought road cycling was for bad gimps. I had just bought myself a gravel bike and was slowly getting into that. However, I had no interest in road cycling until I had watched that documentary. The documentary was about the 2022 Tour de France, and the following week was when the actual 2023 Tour de France kicked off. So I then spent 3 weeks watching Eurosport and getting even more hooked into the sport. And I thought after that, you know what? I'll give road cycling a go. And since then, I have gone on to become a massive road cycling merchant. It's one of my favorite things to do in the world. I don't just ride, but I also watch it. I've got the tour on now. I think we're on stage 12. Against all odds, I have grown to become a massive road cycling fan. And it all stems from watching the Tour de France. I've since gone on to watch different tours from like the Lance Armstrong era, the Team Sky era, and you're probably thinking at this point, why the fuck are you telling us this, you gimp? Well, it is important because I have just had an invite to go over to France and watch the tour. Well, I've actually had 2 invites and I've accepted them both, which means we are going over to watch 2 stages of the Tour de France. And I cannot tell you how excited I am for it. And my bags are more or less packed. We are then making our way down to London to fly across from Gatwick to Carcassonne. We're actually there with 2 different brands on the 2 different days. So we are doing stage 16 with Tissot, who are the watch brand. They are the official timekeepers of the tour. So they're responsible for keeping tabs on all the times of the riders, the distance between the breakaway and the peloton, etc. So that should be pretty interesting behind the scenes with them. And then stage 17, the following day, we are spending with Van Rysel, which means we should get to meet some of the Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial team, which will be sick. And obviously I'm going to be bringing the camera with me to document as much as I can and showcase what it is like on the ground at the biggest cycling event in the world. So let's see what this is all about. Right, I'm just making my way to the train station now. I think I'll cut this bit out of the video and just skip to when I get to France, because this is the boring bit. Actually, what I might do is add a bit of a travel montage and put some French music over the top. Yeah, let's do that. We have made it to France. Flew over from Stansted to a place called Carcassonne on the south of France. Really quite nice actually. And then we got a 1-hour transfer over to Narbonne, which is where we are based for the night, at a team that we are spending the day with tomorrow. So we're actually out at stage 16 with Tissot, the watch brand. They are the official timekeepers of the tour. Going behind the scenes with them guys should be sick. But now we are just chilling out until 8 o'clock when we are going for food. It's also seriously hot out here. It's about 28 degrees and humid as hell. I have no idea how the riders do these big mooches out in these conditions. So it's day 1 for me out there, stage 16 of the tour, and we are going from Grusan to Nîmes. 188 kilometers on the cards with a fairly flat elevation profile, so it was picked to be one for the sprinters or the breakaway potentially. I was cheering on Wout van Aert, favourite rider, wanted to see him win, desperate to see him in the flesh. He's been having a pretty tough tour since coming back from his crash. He's not in the best shape of his life, but I was still cheering him on from the sidelines. Now the day started with us heading over to the event village in Grusan, which is where the riders depart from. Every stage has an event village to begin with and like an opening ceremony, or the caravans is what they call it. And there are 2 event villages. There is one that anyone can access. You just go down, you don't have to pay to get in or anything like that. And then there is a VIP invite only event village, which is mainly run by the sponsors. So you go in there and there's loads of different stands from all the different sponsors and partners of the tour. Unfortunately, because we were there with the brand, that's the one we had access to. So I had a gander around there for a little bit of a mooch, just to check out all the stuff that was on offer. And then made our way to watch the caravans. Now, I don't necessarily know what this actually is about. It's kind of like an opening ceremony, so to speak, that's just run again by the sponsors. They have loads of like weird cars that just ride through the village to the departure area, and they're just chucking like freebies out left, right and centre. Tons of brands. This was about 15 minutes worth of people just driving through. It's a pretty cool spectacle, to be fair, but what I was most looking forward to was getting into the paddocks. So we've just entered the paddock. Because COVID is rife in the peloton at the minute, we are wearing masks, which makes total sense, to be fair. But let's show you around here, because this is where all the team cars are, the riders, the bikes. It is pretty smart. You get to have a wander around this village. It's massive as well, by the way, because there's 22 teams. They all have a bus each, and then loads of different cars and all the bikes and stuff like that. So to get that level of access to the World Tour riders is sensational. And that's what makes cycling such a unique sport, because it requires so much mutual respect between the World Tour riders and their teams and the press and the spectators. Because in that paddock, I was centimetres away from Mark Cavendish's bike. I could have let the air out of his tyres if I wanted to. Obviously I wasn't going to do that. For the most part, the riders are just in their team bus doing their usual preparations, having their breakfast, getting themselves ready for the big day on the bike. But the times where you just see them roaming around, like on their way to the team presentations, etc., they're just cycling through, loads of people in the paddock. It's mad. Van der Poel, Philipsen just riding by. There must be about 10 million quid and the rest worth of bikes and kit just chilling in these paddocks, and naturally I was having a gander close up, having a look at all the setups and that kind of thing. One thing that I thought was pretty cool was you get to see loads of the bikes that aren't released yet. Made it to the Van Rijssel AG2 Mondial team bus. They've got loads of the bikes lined up. They've got a new aero looking bike that I think is coming out next year, as well as the RTR Pros. Have a look at this. So it's cool to see them in the flesh, and also something that was a pretty cool insight was a lot of the riders stick a sticker on their bar that includes their nutrition strategy for the day or course information. So key bits like where the biggest climbs of the day are, etc., so they know what's coming up, because obviously they're riding 21 stages throughout the 3 weeks or whatever. They're not going to know every race stage like the back of their hand, so to have that information on the bar I thought was pretty smart. So after we'd spent about 30 minutes in the paddocks, we'd seen everything we had to see, and it was time for us to hit the road. Now logistically, prior to this, I had no idea how this was going to work, because there's a lot of cars. There's obviously the team cars that have like the bikes and that are working directly with the team, and then each sponsor and each team has loads of other different cars for people that are doing experiences like this. So I mean, I have no idea how many cars there are altogether, but there are hundreds basically. So it's the official team car.
Oh, look, yeah.
The way it worked was we set off before the riders, so we set off about 11:30. The grand depart was about 12:30, so we set off an hour ahead of them basically and made our way up the route that they are riding on from Gruissan to Nîmes. But anyone who is driving on the course or like driving these cars has to have a special specific license to do so, just to access the course. People who are the team drivers, so people who are proper in the mixer driving near the riders, have to have another special license to do so, and most of these people are ex-pro cyclists because they understand the dynamics of riding and racing, etc., whereas just normal people don't. We were lucky enough to be driven around by a guy called Kylian Pator. He is a French ex-professional cyclist from the late 2000s. He used to ride for Team Garmin Slipstream with Bradley Wiggins, which is sick. So I was chewing his ear off about that and what it was like to be a pro cyclist. And each car on the course has a radio installed into it that has a direct line of comms to the race director. They can spit through any comms that involves incidents on the course, or if someone has a crash in the peloton, etc., just so everyone's aware of what's going on. But it was all in French, so I didn't have a Scooby-Doo what they were saying.
Famous people tonight.
Obviously the Tour is such an iconic sporting event, like it's a massive, massive event. So I knew going into it, the fans would be pretty mad. I've seen all the videos and stuff of the caravans, etc. But honestly, every inch of the street on this route was lined with fans screaming, cheering. They decorated the streets. It was like a massive street party. So after about 50 kilometers, we pulled over in this beautiful little French village in the middle of the countryside, had some lunch, and then made our way a further 20k up to about the 70k mark, where we were going to wait for the peloton to come past. And this is where things got even more interesting, because as soon as we got out of the car, I was told that we had the opportunity to go and watch the peloton from a helicopter. And opportunities like that simply do not come up every day, so there was no way in hell I was going to pass up on it. So we got to watch them pass at ground level. And then made our way up into the sky in a helicopter to watch the Tour de France. Wow, I've got no words for that one, just watch this. that's just bucket list stuff. Got no words for it really. We were up there airbound for 20 minutes, 360-degree panoramic views of the French countryside, the peloton below us looking like a pack of ants. Yeah, just an unforgettable experience. And then we landed a couple of kilometers ahead of them where we got back into the car with Killian and made our way to the finish line. That first day I had was just outstanding. I won't forget that anytime soon. And then I had to make my way over to Montpellier Airport, pick up a rental car to then get me to the start of the next stage, which was at St. Paul-Trois Chateau. So I picked up the car and mooched over to the village. I got there quite late in the end, about 10:30. Bonsoir from the new gaff. We have arrived at St. Paul-Trois Chateau. This is where they are departing from tomorrow, a nice little French village. So just went straight to bed basically in preparation for day 2.
Officiellement ouvert.
Day 2, stage 17. This was a pretty chunky stage, so it was St. Paul-Trois Chateau to Super Develoy. Can't pronounce these places, I apologise to any French people I offend, but it was a big one. 178 kilometres with about 2,850 metres of elevation, ending in the Alps. I couldn't wait to get out there. This was going to be such a sick day. Spending it with the Van Rijssel and Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial team, so again, I went over to the event village that was in St. Paul-Trois Chateau. This time that was where their riders were departing from. Met up with the Van Rijssel team and the guys that we were going to be doing this experience with. Went to the paddocks again and had a gander around, and because we were with them, we got to actually go right into the area where the Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial team bus was. So we got to get pretty close up with the riders, emerging from the bus. Sam Bennett, Felix Gall, who's in the top 10 in the GC, and Paul Lapierre, who's the French national champ, which is sick. So the team have been having a really good year. They've won a lot of stages at the different Grand Tours, but they were yet to really do anything in the Tour de France. Obviously they had Felix Gall top 10, but they wanted to pip a couple of stages. This was meant to be a pretty important stage, according to the guy who worked for the AG2R Le Mondial team who was driving us around for the day, because it was potentially going to be one of the last days a break could win, because the final few days of the tour were pretty brutal, and then obviously it ends with the time trial from Monaco to Nice. The agenda for the day was looking pretty similar to the prior day, just without the helicopter. So we set off ahead of the peloton in the car, did about 80 kilometers up the road, pulled over for some lunch. My God, it was so hot that day, by the way. It was about 36 degrees, sun beaming down. Stepped out of the car and it was just hit by a heat wave, like stepping into an oven. And I just can't for the life of me understand how the riders hack it in that heat. The scenery on this route was just different gravy. The drive was beautiful because we got to spend most of it in the Alps. So you had the big alpine views, the mountains in the distance and that sort of stuff. It was lovely. The roads over there as well are perfect. None of these potholes every 3 meters like we've got in the UK. I would have loved to have taken my bike over there. Because it was in the Alps, it was a little bit more remote, so there wasn't people lining every inch of the streets. But what we did get to experience that I was really looking forward to on this route was a couple of climbs. So we had 2 sort of big climbs. There was a Cat 1 and the Cat 2 that we got to drive up and see all the floods of people up there. There was people who had been camping in the caravans for days on end just to get a good view of the riders. This is like cycling heritage and what makes the tour so special. So the first climb we had was the Cat 2 Col Bayard. This was 6.8 kilometers long, average gradient of 7.3%, a nice little burner in the heat. There was a ton of spectators up there, and then when the riders get to the top of there, they descend down a little bit before the main climb of the day, the Cat 1, Col de Noyer. Which is 7.5 kilometers in distance and 8.1% average gradient, so it is a significant climb, and it takes you right up like hairpin roads. It's a beautiful, beautiful stretch of road, and the crowds there were insane. The amount of people up there was crazy. I would have loved to have seen it when the riders were passing up, but obviously we were ahead of the riders. They were about an hour behind us or so we didn't get to see the fans like going crazy in that, but it was still a really cool experience just to drive up that road with the fans surrounding us. Eventually we got to the final hill of the day, which takes you up to Super Delavoye, which is like a ski village up in the Alps, right on top of a hill. It was a spectacular finish for a race, and this time around we did make it into the sort of like VIP area, so I got a sick view of the riders coming in. I'm done. We just got to see Carapaz win from the break. What a little monster he is. And then Pogacar and Vingegaard fighting it out as well. Class. Outstanding stuff. Look where we are. Now just sunburn because I had to retain my space for about 25 minutes before Carapaz arrived. Some others are just coming in now. Pretty sure the last rider will be here soon, and then I am getting the shuttle bus back to St. Paul-Trois-Chateaux. That is all she wrote. A tremendous few days out there watching the event, filming stuff at the tour. There is now what I'd rather be doing, and it's now going to be my life mission to get to more of these events. The Grand Tours, the Classics, whatever it is, and you know, the Vuelta isn't too far away, so stay tuned. Let's see what we can do there.